I come from a very tiny town in the Hungarian countryside. It's about 5,000 people, a lot of dirt roads, 2 grocery stores, a few bus stops, 1 gas station. And for as long as I can remember, I've always dreamed of living in a big city. I dreamt of New York, I dreamt of London, I dreamt of learning how to speak English and move abroad. I dreamt of just a life that is bigger than the tiny town that I was in. I felt like I outgrew it very fast, although I didn't know how to articulate that feeling or what I was feeling at the time. I just never ever felt like I belong where I am. I always felt like an alien. I never felt like I found my place there, and it used to be very, very painful for me. I felt very lonely, and although throughout the course of my life I've learned that I love to be alone, and I learned how to be alone with myself and sit with myself properly and not be lonely. At that time, growing up, and in my teens especially, I was very, very lonely. And I didn't understand why I didn't fit in. I didn't understand why I was different and how I was just meant to be somewhere else. And that's not to say that one is better than the other. I think some of my friends back home in my hometown are having very quiet but very fulfilling lives for themselves. But for me, that was never ever something that I could see for myself. It was never something that would have ever made me happy, and I always felt guilty. I felt guilty for wanting more. I felt guilty for not belonging, and I felt very lonely and isolated, and I felt like an alien growing up, and I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I was so sure that there was something wrong with me. And I think it took me a very long time to find pieces of myself. I think it took me moving to 2 different cities, 2 different big cities. When I was 18, I moved to the capital of my country, which is a very beautiful city. I started working as a flight attendant, and I thought this was going to be the moment that my whole entire life changes, and I felt so happy that I finally have opportunity. I felt like this is going to change everything, right? I'm in a better place now. It's a big city. This is what I always wanted. I'm going to be happy, right? I think I found very quickly that I also outgrew that place. I've done a lot of growing there, but I just never felt like I quite belonged there either, and it made me very, very confused, and it made me very sad. And I think for a long time I felt very, very lost, because this is the big city, this is the big capital that I always wanted to live in, right? And what do you mean I still don't feel like I belong? I was so mad at the world and mad at myself mostly for not making myself belong and for not trying harder, but for some reason I just couldn't, and I didn't understand why that was, and I didn't understand that that place just wasn't meant to me, that I was never going to thrive in my country. To some extent I knew, because I told you guys I always wanted to learn English and move abroad, and I just didn't. I guess I still felt guilty that I didn't belong in my country, and I still do to this day. I go back and I love to visit now, but I couldn't imagine myself living there, and I still feel very guilty because of that. I don't want to think of myself as someone who's above that country or too good for that country. I don't think I am. I don't think that is the thing. I think we need to stop looking at it that way and just realize that certain people thrive in certain places. And there's also people who thrive in my country, and there's people who move there from other countries, and they feel at home and they feel welcomed and they feel like they've truly found themselves. Part of me wishes that could be me, but I just never felt at home. That is the truth. So when I was 21, I moved from a small European airline to a big Middle Eastern carrier, and it took me to Dubai. All of their crew live in Dubai, so when I got accepted to that airline, I moved out here alone at 20, almost 21. I had my 21st birthday in Dubai. I was absolutely ecstatic, and I thought again that my whole life was going to change, and this time it really did. And I found parts of myself that I never even knew existed, that I didn't know could exist. I saw a side of myself that I didn't think was possible to have for me. I saw that in other people. I saw versions of that in other people, and always admired that, and I didn't ever think that I could have that for myself. I didn't ever think that I could be the person that I am today, and it took me almost 22 years to find those pieces of myself. And you know, even when I first moved to Dubai, I didn't really know who I was, and I was still very lost. But I think my time here just urged me to grow in ways that I've always craved, and I was able to finally come out of survival mode and to take the steps towards self-development that I've been craving my whole entire life. And finally, for the first time ever during my, at that time, 21 years of being alive, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I felt like I was surrounded by like-minded people. I felt like I had the opportunity, which I never ever felt like I did before. And I felt like I was accepted. I felt like I could just be myself, and there's similar people to me around here. That I was surrounded by people who truly saw me for who I am, and that I could show them parts of myself that I was scared to show people back home, and that I didn't ever felt like could be understood because the people from my small town thought so differently and were never even able to comprehend these parts of me that I so deeply wished to be understood. That is the one thing I wanted my entire life, is to be understood, and I never felt like I was. And I think, and that is why I think I was so sad when I moved to Budapest, because I thought, this is a big city, finally, it's not my tiny town. Surely find people with a similar mindset here and I'm going to be understood, and I never was, and that made me very sad. And I think, you know what, I'm sure there's people who I would have gotten along with greatly there, but in a way, I can see why I didn't find them, and I'm very grateful for that now, because then maybe I would have never came to Dubai. If I felt understood and accepted in my little small town of 5,000 people and dirt roads, I would have never even moved to the capital. That misunderstanding, that feeling of not belonging, is the thing that's going to drive you to a place where you belong ultimately, and I think that's very beautiful. I didn't realize why people always said your teens were difficult. I just thought that was life, you know, but now being 22, and I know that I'm still very young, and in a few years I'll probably look back and feel like I didn't know anything now, but in this very moment, I do feel like I understand that saying a bit more. And I understand how differently I saw that pain back then, and how very painful it was for me to not belong and to be so lonely in a town, in a place, in a country that was supposed to be home for me. That was insanely painful, and maybe I do feel a little bit guilty about being grateful for it now, because when I think back, I used to think it was torture. And I think if you're going through that phase right now, and you're feeling so lost, and you don't know what's wrong with you, and you don't know why you don't feel accepted, and why you don't feel like you have people around you who are truly your soul tribe, and they understand you, and they see you, because I never ever felt seen. And it is very hard to not feel seen, especially by the people who are supposed to be in the same culture as you, who are supposed to, you know, work in similar ways that you do, but maybe you just don't work that way. And that is okay. Then you just need to find the place in the world where you do. And maybe that's not going to be in your country. Maybe it is going to be in your country. Maybe it's going to be a big city. Maybe it's going to be a small city. Maybe it's going to be a slightly bigger city. Maybe it's going to be a cottage in the countryside. I don't know where you're going to find that. And you still don't know where you're going to find that. And the only way you will discover it is by going out there and looking for clues and slowly gathering those little bits and pieces of information that you need to ultimately lead you to the place where you will find those people who will truly see you and accept you. And it's going to lead you to a place that is going to be truly magical for you, and where you're going to have so much growth and opportunity, and where you will feel accepted, and where you won't feel like an alien, and where you will feel like, wow, I am surrounded by people who think like me. I am surrounded by people who see the world like I see it. And it is going to be the best feeling ever. I remember when I first felt that, I wanted to cry. When I first arrived to Dubai, and the very next day I went out on a walk with these two girls that I arrived with at the same time, who were also coming to work for the airline, and we were put in the same building, and we went out for a walk the next day, and we just talked, and all three of us were from different continents, different parts of the world, but we felt so connected and we thought so similarly. I remember I wanted to cry on that walk. I didn't, because that would have made me a weirdo, wouldn't it? But I don't even remember. Maybe I cried going back home. I don't know. I would admit it. You guys know me. I'm very vulnerable. I'm very open like that. But I literally don't know, but I know that I had that feeling inside of me that just, I had the tears inside of me. I had this intense feeling of belonging that I've never ever felt in my entire life. I think it was more of a case of the place found me rather than me finding the place, because I didn't necessarily plan on coming to Dubai very much. I know when I was younger, I used to watch this one flight attendant's vlogs who lived in Dubai and was working for this airline, but I didn't ever think much of it, and I didn't plan on coming here. And then randomly I became a flight attendant. I thought being in the capital and working for that airline was going to take me where I wanted to be, and then when I realized it didn't, and I just stumbled upon this option, I don't even think it felt like the right thing to do at the time. I was just going with the flow, and then somehow I ended up in the right place. And I think if you're going to ask me how do I find that place, like Trix, I'm so lost. I don't even know where to start. I don't feel like I belong in my country. I don't know which city I should move to. I have no idea where to start. Like, I remember back in Hungary, we used to do a flight to Dubai, and every single time I was sitting on the jump seat, you know, when the aircraft is coming from the runway to where it's parking. It's called taxiing. Every time we're taxiing, and I was just looking out my tiny observation window and looking at the big aircrafts that were parked here that belong to the airline that I now work for. I would just get this feeling inside of me. I would just get this. Now, I don't know if everyone believes in this. Maybe we'll just call it a feeling for those who don't, but for those who do, I would call them synchronicities. I think if you've ever had this intense moment of synchronicity in your life, then you will understand what I'm talking about. It's when you just absolutely know that you're in the right place at the right time, and you just get this intense feeling in your chest, this overwhelming feeling of, this is it. I've never really felt that, but I know I had something similar when I was looking at those aircrafts. Every time we landed into Dubai, I had a tingling of that. And ultimately, when I took this opportunity, I just was thinking of that little feeling inside of me every time that we landed here, every time I would see those aircrafts. And I think that ultimately was the thing that led me onto this huge, huge self-growth journey that led me to get to know myself, because I was always interested in wellness and meditation, that kind of stuff, but I was in such intense survival mode my entire life before coming here that I never had the opportunity to truly get to know myself and do a lot of self-development. And I think just following those little clues landed me at the right place at the right time, and I was able to go on this incredible journey that I am now able to share with you guys. And that really is the only advice I can give on that, is just try to listen to yourself and try to tune in those little inklings that you have that feel right, and just follow them. And you know, the first place that you land might not be the right place. The second place that you land might not be the right place, but if you just keep following those little clues, eventually you will end up in a place that is meant for you in such a way that is going to absolutely want to make you cry. And you're going to be surrounded by people who truly accept you for who you are, people who see the world similarly to you, and people who truly see you. And it's going to be the best thing in the entire world. And I can only wish you a lot of luck on that journey, and I wish you a lot of strength, because it does take a lot of strength. Sometimes I forget that I moved to a different continent completely on my own at 20. I don't really think of it as something that requires strength, because I always had this feeling of not wanting to be where I am. But I I guess it does require some strength. And yeah, I think don't forget that. I think don't forget that pursuing that little feeling that's going to take you to different places because the one you're in is not for you. It takes strength, and don't ever forget how strong you are. And I truly wish you the best in your journey, and I just can't wait for you to find those people who will feel like family to you, and those people who you've been looking for your entire life. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Maybe I'll need to find another different position because still I feel like I was out of breath so many times. Maybe that's a me problem, but I'll just cut it out for you guys. I'm not gonna bore you with my hyperventilating. Anyway, I'll see you. Bye.